All right, synthetic division. What we're going to do is we're going to use synthetic division to divide polynomials, and we're going to use it to break down polynomials and factor them further. So we're going to get a little practice with factoring today as well in this lesson. So it should help you in getting ready for the next the quiz tomorrow anyway. So first thing we're going to do is use synthetic division to divide. So this first example, we're going to divide x or 3x to the third minus 4x squared minus 28x minus 16. No. We're gonna synthetic division is a whole different setup than long division was. So it's gonna be kind of completely different. But it does the same thing as long division did. So we did long division problems that looked like this when we got them, and we rewrote them.
Why would we need synthetic division?
It's more like, why would you need long division? And the reason that you need long division is because you can't do synthetic division with trinomials and stuff like that. The only time you can use synthetic division is when you're dividing by a small factor, like a linear factor. It's an x to the first power. The synthetic division is.
So you couldn't do that with like 2x to the second plus 2?
You couldn't do synthetic division with like 2x squared plus 5. You have to have a linear piece. But yeah, it has to be something like that. All right, so with synthetic division, this is the way you want to set it up. So we're going to draw a little box or part of a box there. So it's like a laying down L. And then we're going to put a shelf on the side. Okay. Now, inside of that box, you're going to have a top row, and then you're going to have a blank row. And then underneath is where our answers is going to be. Or our answers are going to be. Sorry. All right, so we got a top row, blank row, and then answers down here. All right, so what we need to do is put the coefficients of this polynomial inside there. So 3, -4, -28, and -16 goes in the top row. It's like 4 columns is what we were thinking like there, okay? Now, if there's a missing piece, just like with long division, you're going to put a 0 in its place. So if there wasn't an x squared, you'd put a 0 in the x squared spot, okay? Just like with long division. Now, the next thing we need is what goes on the shelf. And the way that you're going to get what goes on the shelf is you take what you're dividing by, set it equal to 0, and solve it. So that if I solve that, I'm going to get x equals -2. So a -2 is what goes on that shelf there. Okay. With synthetic division, one thing that makes it easier is you're not subtracting anymore. You're always going to add. In synthetic division, you're always going to add. Okay, so the first thing we need to do, the first step every time when you do synthetic is you're going to add 3 plus nothing. Whatever's in the front there plus nothing goes there. You're still going to multiply. You're going to say whatever's here times -2. That's a -6. And then we're going to add. -4 plus -6 is -10.
Why did we leave that 3?
Because
Add 0.
it's like doing long division. What times x would get me 3x to the third? It's 3x squared technically. So that's why we have to have that 3 there. It's not long division, but it does the same thing as long division. So it's kind of hard to explain there. Now we're going to multiply -10 times -2, get +20, and add. That's -8. Multiply, be +16, right? What's -16 plus +16? 0. Right there, that last term is the remainder. Just like yesterday, we would have a remainder. That's what that is. It's important that that's a 0 because that tells us something about x plus 2 and that polynomial up there. Now, here's what the quotient is. This is where our answer comes from. This is what we would have gotten if we did long division. We would have gotten 3x squared minus 10x minus 8. Technically plus 0 over x plus 2, but since that's a 0, we don't have a remainder there. We started with x cubed. When you do synthetic division, it's going to take it down 1 power. So the quotient starts with x squared. So if we start with an x to the 3rd power, your answer is going to start with an x squared. You're going to go all the way, go down from there. Okay? So always going to set up coefficients in here, set what you're dividing by equal to 0, and that goes on the shelf.
Oh, when those 3 numbers there,
That's the answer. If we had done long division with that polynomial and x plus 2, we would have gotten the same answer.
you only had to add those x's on there.
But yeah, we wouldn't have had to add the x's on there. They'd have been in there. In long
We
division,
got to this time, though.
we do this time because it's synthetic. We take the x's out and then we got to put them back. All right. Now, let's look at another one. Once we get the process of synthetic down, it actually is a lot easier, in my opinion. So, got x cubed plus 4x squared minus x minus 1 divided by x plus 3. Okay. Setting it up. Coefficients go on the inside. There's a 1 in front of x cubed, 4x squared, -1, -1. What goes on the little shelf? -3. Yes, every time. Every time you're doing synthetic division, you're just going to drop that number down. And then add. Always add. 1. Yes. That's one of the major differences in long division and synthetic is you do addition instead of subtraction. That'd be -3, so that'd be -4. That'd be +12. Remainder is 11 this time. So when the remainder wasn't 0, we got a remainder of 11. Okay, I always put mine in a box. That's not a, everybody that does this doesn't do that. I always do that just so I remember, hey, that's a remainder. Don't give it an x. That's why I do that. Okay, so final answer or quotient would be x squared plus x minus 4 plus 11 over x plus 3. It's not. To me, it's easier than the long division because you're not having to distribute out across a polynomial. You're just dealing with numbers. You don't have the x's to deal with until you come back to write your answer.
You know what? If we just done the quiz over this and the divide, I think it'd be a whole lot better.
Well, all we ever had to do was get up and pour a bowl of cereal every morning. We'd all be doing well, but unfortunately, that's not the only thing we ever have to do. We got to put on our clothes and go to work. Yeah, it does that. It's a trial, and I'm cheap. Don't want to pay $12 for it or $13 for it because they keep telling me they're going to get the Chromecast fixed, which I already have one of those, and it's free. They hadn't got it fixed yet. All right. So here we have a polynomial. Got a cubic. We've got all the pieces there. So we're going to set up synthetic division. The reason we know we can use synthetic is because we got a small polynomial we're dividing by, a linear one. Yes, ma'am. You still got to put a representative from every power, just like you do with long division. So we got 4, 1, -3, 7. What goes on the shelf this time? Positive or negative? Positive 1. Okay. Drop the 4 down and go to work. What'd you get for a remainder? That's right. Did you get? Yeah, x minus 1. Yeah, 4x to the second plus 5x. Yeah, there's going to, without a variable. Yeah, that's right. You're always going to start with the 1 less power, and that this term should not have an x, and this is your remainder. So the last two should not have a variable. Because you're dividing by x to the first, x cubed over x to the first. We're reduces to be x squared when you divide those. So you're going down 1 power. Every time you do synthetic division, it brings it down 1 power. So if you started with the x to the 4th, it goes to 3. If you x third, it goes to 2. If you start with the x squared, it goes to 1. Okay. All right.
This is about as hard as it gets.
Well, as far as synthetic division, doesn't get any harder than that. It's the same thing over and over. Now let's talk about where we can go further with that, and that's factoring a polynomial. So I told you we're going to use.
So this is what's on our quiz.
The factoring part is, but the synthetic is not.
I need to know how to factor it. We need to learn it.
Algebra 1. In section 5.4. It was last week. Last Thursday and Friday.
I forgot.
I'd say use synthetic. I mean synthetic division to factor the polynomial completely. All right. So if x minus 4 is a factor of f of x equals x to the 3rd minus 6x squared plus 5x plus 12. Find the other factors. Okay. Example D, I guess. Sure. All right. Now, here I'm telling you what one of the factors is. We're going to build up later on in this chapter about what if you don't tell you that. Today, you're going to get that information. I'm going to tell you what one of the factors is of the polynomial. So x minus 4 is a factor of that. That means when I divide x minus 4 into this polynomial, the remainder would be 0. That's what it means to be a factor. It's just like 2 is a factor of 12 because 2 goes into 12 evenly with a remainder of 0. 2 goes into 12 6 times, remainder of 0. Polynomials, if x minus 4 is a factor of it, means it divides into it evenly with nothing left over. So that's what we're taking advantage of here. What's it mean to be a factor? So if I look at that polynomial, it's got 4 terms. I would normally try to factor it by grouping, but it won't work. Because if I group that, x squared comes out of the first 2 and it leaves x minus 6. There's no way I could pull a 5 out and get x minus 6 left on the next pair. So it doesn't factor normally with the grouping, so we've got to use this method to get there. So we're going to set up our synthetic division. 1, negative 6, 5, 12. What's going to go on my shelf? Positive 4, yeah. Break it down. Pull down the 1, and then go 1 times 4 is 4. Be negative 2. Be negative 8. Negative 3 multiplies negative 12. And I get a 0 in the remainder position. If I don't get a 0 in the remainder position, it means that that's not a factor. Okay? If they're telling me it is a factor in the instructions for the problems, and I don't get a 0 right there, I probably missed a sign somewhere, most likely, or mismultiplied or misadded. Okay, so that should always turn into be a 0 when they tell us that's a factor. Now, that tells us, okay, x minus 4 is a factor of that. That leaves us this x squared minus 2x minus 3. And the instructions said factor it completely. So I'm going to try to factor this trinomial.
So this is what's on our.
And this is the part that would be on your quiz tomorrow. Factoring is. So it's a trinomial, so I'm going to use the x method. So that'd be negative 3 on top and negative 2 on the bottom. Be negative 3 and positive 1. So that means, what are the factors for that trinomial? X minus 3 and x plus 1. And now we also know that the x minus 4 is a factor from the beginning. They told us that already. This is the factored form of that polynomial we started with. Write that factored form.
That's all you do right there.
To get it factored, yes.
What if there's a
When
number.
if they ask us to solve it, yes. But right now we're getting factored form. If we can get here, the solving part's the easiest thing we'll do today.
Okay. What about if there's a number before x?
Then you would have to do you'd multiply that number times the constant on the end, and then you'd have to do grouping from there. All right, let's look at another one that's another polynomial. Let's say we had f of x is equal to x to the third power minus x squared minus 22x plus 40. And they tell me that x minus 4 is a factor. I'm just using x minus 4 again. We're still going to do synthetic division with the x minus 4. We're doing it because it's faster and easier than long division is. Long division would work, but it's a lot more operations, a lot more work to do long division for that. So I don't know why I put an x there. Shouldn't have. Okay. Drop the 1, multiply. Negative 10. That's negative 40. There's my remainder of 0. I should get that. If x minus 4 is a factor, then that should be 0 in the remainder position. So that leaves me the trinomial x squared plus 3x minus 10 left. So I got x minus 4 as a factor, and then I've got this trinomial. What I want to try to do is factor that trinomial. Yeah, multiply on top, add on the bottom. That's right. 5 and negative 2. There you go. That's right. So that'd be x plus 5, x minus 2. And we still got the x minus 4 from the beginning. That's the factored form of that polynomial. Not bad at all. Really, it's pretty nice. All right. All right. Let's do one more of those, and then we'll get to the last thing we'll do today. All right. So let's do this one. F of x is equal to 3x to the third minus 4x squared minus 28x minus 16. And let's say, and let's say we had 2x plus 3 is a factor. Yeah, we got to get x by itself. Remember, to do our synthetic division, we set equal to 0 and solve it. So I wrote that wrong. It should be 3x plus 2. Sorry. Dyslexia kicked in. It should give you a fraction anyway, but it shouldn't be that fraction. So divide or subtract 2. X equals, 3x equals negative 2. Divide by 3. X is negative 2/3. That's what's going to go on our shelf, a fraction. And that's okay. Yeah, it is. It's not bad. It's just a number. You got a calculator. So we got 3, negative 4, negative 28, negative 16. Drop the 3 down. When I multiply 3 times negative 2/3, negative 2. Which is nice because then, I add those two together and get negative 6. Negative 6 times negative 2/3 would be positive 4.
Oh,
And then negative 28 plus 4 is negative 24. And then I multiply that times negative 2/3. That's going to be a positive 16. The remainder is 0. Well, let's look at that. This is where, some review on factoring is going to come in. Okay. All right. So we've got 3x plus 2. I did it again. And then the 3x squared minus 6x minus 24. We're wanting to factor this trinomial that's left here. What's the first thing we always look for when we're factoring?
GCF.
GCF. What's the GCF of all three of those? 3. That'll keep us from getting such a large number. Because 3 times 24 is a pretty big number, or a bigger number, a little harder to find. So I can divide all those by 3. So that means I can factor a 3 out to the front of the whole problem. And that's going to give me 3. Now I've still got the 3x plus 2, and then I've got this trinomial x squared minus 2x minus 8. And I'm going to try to factor that trinomial there. So this 3 that I put out here in the front came from that trinomial. That's where that came from. I'm just putting it in front because that's kind of the accepted way of doing it in math class. Just put your GCF out in front of all your parentheses. Okay? So we need something that multiplies to be negative 8 and adds to be negative 2. Negative 4 and 2. So that's nice. Yeah, we got the 3, we got the 3x plus 2, we've got the x minus 4, and then x plus 2 is the factored form of that polynomial. Yeah, getting a little rain out there right now. That's good, guys. We need some. All right. So, factoring after you do your synthetic division. Your synthetic's going to break it down, and most everything you're going to be dealing with in today's stuff is starting with an x cubed, and you're going to break down to an x squared, and then do factoring from there. Okay. Let's get the last thing, and that's solving or finding the zeros. If you can do the factored form, the zeros is the easiest part. Okay. Buyer's remorse. Finding the zeros of polynomials. Okay. Now, you're going to be given one of them today. So I'm going to tell you what one of the zeros is, and then you're going to find the rest of them. Next week, I'm going to teach you how to find them on your own. And it's going to involve the graphing calculator and a little bit of other, some more math skills that would really match up well with what we've been doing so far. Okay, so finding the zeros of polynomial, that just means set it equal to 0. That's all that means. Okay, so when we look at a polynomial, and that's, I don't know what letter we on. G. I don't know why I skipped the whole page either. Example G. So here's our function to start with. Let's say we had x to the third minus 2x squared minus 23x plus 60. And then they're going to put like a little semicolon, and they're going to say, okay, the number that we write after this is a 0 of that polynomial. 3 is a 0. That means that if I plug 3 in for x in this problem, the answer is 0. I worked all that out. 3 to the third power minus 2 times 3 squared minus 23 times 3 plus 60 is 0. That's what that means. That when it says 3 is a 0, that's a good question. Because what does that mean? It does. Do what now? No, it's what it is x is a 3. F of x is the y value. This is the x value. When we plug that in, what we're saying, if it's a 0, is we're saying that the y value that goes with 3 is 0. So we're getting an ordered pair. Yes, right. Relates to a graph, and that's where we're headed later. I know y'all don't like graphing, but we're going back to that eventually, okay? Because everything relates to a graph. All right, now, so in order to find those other zeros, we need to do synthetic division to break this polynomial down so that we can factor it. Once we get it factored, finding the zeros, again, is the easiest part, okay? So we're going to set it up. 1, -2, -23, 60. Yes. Yes. So enthusiastic, right?
Yeah.
All right. So break down, do your synthetic division with that. You already know how to do that, so that's the boring part, right? Yeah. Remainder 0. Surprise, surprise. So now we have this polynomial, x squared plus x minus 20, and we want to try to factor it. And we also, technically have x minus 3 as a factor as well. If you set that equal to 0, what's x equal? 3. The 3 that they told us about. That's really what that factor is.
What was that 20 makes it?
That's negative 60. I'm sorry. I thought I put little. Yeah. Negative sign. All right. Now, let's factor that trinomial. So we're getting a lot of practice factoring trinomials today. So negative 20 add to be 1. 5 and so that's x plus 5, x minus 4. We still have the factor x minus 3 that we already know the 0 from. So what we're doing here is we're setting that entire polynomial in factored form equal to 0. That's what finding a 0 means. So x minus 3 equals 0, x plus 5 equals 0, x minus 4 equals 0. And then you just solve all three of them. Exactly. That's why I say that's the easiest part. Good job. So we get originally our what was the degree of our polynomial? What was the highest exponent? 3, right? It was cubic because it started out with x to the third power. How many answers did we find? 3. That's not a coincidence. That should match up. Yeah. See, I disagree. Tucker, could you kill the air for just a little bit? These I hate for these ladies to get frostbite. All right, let's look at a couple more, or one more of those at least. Yeah, you do.
Yeah.
All right, so let's say we got g of x is equal to all right. Let's say we got x to the third power plus 8x squared plus 5x minus 14. And they tell us that f of negative 2 is equal to 0. Or not f, but g in this case. I gotta change my letter. Okay? So they're telling me that when I plug in x equals negative 2, I get 0 as an answer. They're telling me the 0 is negative 2. That's what they're telling me from that. So that means what I need to use in synthetic division is a negative 2. Drop it down. Remainder of 0. No surprise. That's what should happen. When they tell me that something equals 0 when you run it through there, when you plug it into the problem, the remainder should be 0 when that happens. Okay. Yeah, if it isn't, you either made a sign mistake or maybe mismultiplied or misadded somewhere. So that's always a good place to say, okay, I did it right. I got I got something going for me. What do you mean?
Like, if it ends up being like 2 or something.
This is not gonna work.
No.
Yeah.
No, they're going to tell you the one of the zeros. They're not going to tell you something that's. They're going to tell you one of the zeros because that's important that you get a zero so that you can break the polynomial down into smaller pieces. Okay, so multiply to be -7 and add to be +6.
All right, so the last number goes to the top, the middle one goes to the
Well, technically, it's 1 times -7. Whatever's in front times that goes up top,
Okay.
and then the middle is always going to go in the bottom. So how much? What would that be? 7 and -1. That's the only options we got. Okay, so that's x plus 7, x minus 1, not x minus 2, but x plus 2. Remember, they changed signs because -2 was a 0, so x plus 2 was the factor that came from that. So x plus. Yeah. That's okay. That's what I want you to start recognizing and stuff like that. If you get that stuff, then it's gonna make things a little easier as you go here. There's our -2. There's our -7. There's our 1. And everything worked out great. We're all happy camper, something like that. All right. Those are for you to get ready for the quiz tomorrow. So you're welcome to do those or work on this. Okay, so let me write up what I want you to do for this. Kylie? Do what now? What? Those handouts from yesterday? No, those are just to help you get ready for the quiz. I'm not taking those up. Ideally, that you would get those done for tomorrow to help you. I will work all of those you want me to. I actually did. So those handouts.
These right here.
You tell them. Don't. I will if you got them. I'll give you a grade for it. I don't care. It pays the same. All right. Yeah, I'll take them up. Yeah, that's fine.
The divide part, I'm just.
Factoring. Yeah. All right. Expensive magnets, you know.
Yeah.
Yeah. Yeah. Their answers are there. I didn't write out all the steps there. Those are the answers for that. All right. So for today's stuff, I know we've already done 11 through 18. You did it with long division. So you should get the same answers doing it with synthetic division, right? Okay, so that'll get you some way of realizing, oh, I got the same answers I did before, hopefully. Or it looks familiar to you. Okay, so 11 through 34 there. Follow those instructions. You want to use synthetic division to do that. On 21 through 28, you're just factoring. When you get to 29 through 34, you're taking those factors and setting them equal to 0 and getting the answers.
Or could you take these up and we do quizzes tomorrow, and if we don't do good on them, extra credit on our quiz?
There's extra credit built in on the quiz, I think. I think so.
I just wondered.
I've made 4 or 5 quizzes today, so my brain is possibly not doing right. Okay, so it is, but I'm